Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Ruairi, Walsh and Kieran. Lads, how are things?
There you go, Mark.
Ethan.
Great. Hope you all had a good St. Patrick's long weekend. I suppose we'll focus primarily on the Allianz Hurling League, 1A, 1B and 2A. Regular seasons in the books, get the lads' reaction. I suppose first off, we need to congratulate St. Kieran's, St. Killian's, Garran Tower of Antrim, Kilfin and also St. Mary's Newport for winning their respective All-Ireland Colleges finals. Congratulations to everyone, and particularly St. Kieran's College securing their 25th Croke Cup final win. Good performance against a very gallant St. Raphael's Ruairi team. I suppose, guys, we'll kind of get straight in there in terms of the Allianz Hurling League. A few storylines from 1A and 1B. I suppose maybe, Rory, we can get your thoughts in terms of Tullamore, Offaly versus Clare. I suppose the two managers here, Johnny Kelly and Brian Lowe, probably relatively pleased with the outing for both sides.
Yeah, I'd say Johnny Kelly is probably a bit disappointed Offaly didn't hold on, because the only time Clare led was at the very end of the game, as in at the last puck of the game, more or less. So he would have been, anxious that Offaly got a win. We were just speaking last week about how it would be a big one for Offaly, rounding up the league to finish with a win, going into Joe McDonough. And they had every chance. And, we also spoke about with Clare that it was going to be a much changed Clare team, which it was. And sometimes it can be just hard, like lads haven't played with each other, they've trained with each other, but going out playing this level, even like with lads you might never have heard beside in a game before, can be tough enough. But look, as the game went on, Clare came more and more into it second half, and eventually a couple of late David Reedy frees won it from the end. But notably Patrick Crotty scored quite heavily for Clare. So good to see. He's been kind of around the panel now for a couple of years, and we'd know him from the UL inside as well. He was on the Fitzgibbon team last year and on the freshman won the All-Ireland the year before. So also Ian Galvin got 4 points from playing that second half as well. So, good to see Ian Galvin finding a bit of form from a Clare point of view. And then Offaly as well, Owen Cahill, scoring 10 points. I know a lot of it was frees, but this time of year in difficult conditions as it was last weekend, each free is important. But they had a spread of scores as well. I think Offaly had maybe 10 different scores over the course of the game, which shows maybe we were questioning Offaly's depth, but it shows that there is a panel of players there to work with, because Screeney didn't feature. Ravenhill only came on as a sub, so one or two of these guys that had put their hands up previously, it was a chance for Johnny Kelly to check out a couple more players, and I'm sure he'd be happy that he got big performances from a couple of boys that hadn't had much league time so far. So we'll give him plenty of talking into Joe McDonough, and it'll show him that maybe he can rotate a small bit, because it is an arduous campaign, and he'll have found out a little bit about some of the lads that he'll be able to, over different weeks, not put out the same team in every single game.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran, get you in there. And I suppose from an Offaly perspective, probably asked for a response last week after the Cork round 4 fixture. And I suppose Johnny Kelly management has said at the top of the show here, would have been pleased with the efforts, maybe disappointed with late chances being squandered. But I mean, overall, a very positive performance of the faithful county.
Yeah, I suppose looking back to the league overall, it hasn't been a bad league campaign either for them. They came to Wexford Park and pushed them all the way to get their draw. And the other day it could have been a win. And the same when they went to Kilkenny, there isn't many teams go to Kilkenny and get a result, but to be 6 points up at half time, albeit they had a strong win with them, but I suppose it's more so the good performances they've had in the league, and I'm sure there'll be a certain level of disappointment over the weekend not to get the win against Clare. They were 6 points up at half time as well. Okay, they had the win in the first half, but just that, I think that probably the changing of the game was when David Reedy came on. They seemed to have settled Clare's forward unit. They'll be disappointed, but look, I'm sure they'll be still fairly confident going into the Joe McDonough. The games they've played over the last couple of weeks will stand to them. Just the experience some of the younger guys will have gained, and if they can keep everybody fit, and you'd imagine they have to be hot favourites for the Joe McDonough. And I suppose they will be disappointed, but I'm sure the league won't be remembered by the end of the year. I'm sure if they win the Joe McDonough, it'll be just a stepping stone along the way to it. So, look, they're not far off. We went through that in weeks gone by. Bar that Cork result last week, they just looked like they were completely off it. They're not too far from the top table. A little bit more to go, but they've took huge strides the last year or two.
look, we're looking at the end of the regular league season here. Pros and cons. And I mean, for Clare, really, an awful lot of positives coming out of this league campaign, Rory. I mean, Brian Lohan and management have a nice little problem on their hands in terms of maybe starting lineup, particularly against Limerick in Cusack Park, because an awful lot of these squad players have really impressed in these first 5 fixtures of the league.
Yeah, and I suppose there's a lot of household names to come back in terms of O'Donnell and Tony Kelly in particular in the forward line. You're mentioned as well, David McInerney and Ryan Taylor and a few other boys as well. What I'd say, maybe apart from one or two, maybe pushing into the starting lineup, like we mentioned, Sean Rayner, Ryan Killamona there a couple of times, who's played really well. John Keneally as well of Clooney Quinn was very impressive for the Clare under-20s last year. They got to the Munster final. He started full back the last day as well and got a full 70 minutes in. So you're kind of looking there, like there's definitely more depth. And I think Clare needed to get a bit more depth in the back line. I think we saw last year with the Munster final with one big injury in the full back line with Conor Cleary, and things didn't go very well. But at least now there seems to be that bit more depth in the back line, because forwards, every player that seems to be breaking through for the last 2 or 3 years was a forward. So it was getting a bit lopsided, but there seems to be a talent coming through in the backs. And even looking down at the younger brigade, again, you have Rowan Keane, who was excellent for the Clare minors last year, full back, and Gunning. Now I know they're a few years off, but there is a sign. Gunning was the captain from Broadford, cornerback, who was excellent throughout the minor campaign as well. There is a sign that there is, especially a good few backs coming through if they can keep them progressing. But from Offaly point of view, maybe they're as well next year to be in 1B, because there's still going to be a couple of good teams in there. Like you'll have Waterford, Dublin. They are going to get good competitive matches, and there won't be the pressure of maybe having an off day as we saw against Cork last week and shipping a big beating either. They will get games in there that they'll target that they can win, and also like they'll be playing against some top players as well, where Johnny Kelly or whoever is managing next year will be able to try out and see exactly how good certain players are. They'll maybe get proper matchups. So I don't think Offaly will be too concerned that they're going on to 1B, and the fact they've had a couple of good performances as well will kind of bite them up for the Joe McDonagh Cup, where themselves and Westmeath probably have had similar campaigns up and down, but both teams will be really fancying their chances in the Joe McDonagh Cup now as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Rory. Suppose, Kieran, we could probably focus on Chadwick's Park, Wexford. Wexford entertaining Cork, and Cork came out 321 to 115 winners. Another impressive outing for Cork again. I suppose Cork have used 32 players so far in the league. I suppose the big question here, Kieran, is does Pat Ryan know he's first 15 to come out against Watford first day out in the Munster Championship?
Well, it's hard to know. I think there's definitely one name secure on the team sheet, and it's Alan Connolly. After his last 2 games, he had 3 goals, 3-2 on the day. He could have had another 3 goals. Like there was 3 more clear-cut goal chances. On another day he would have scored. So, he's just electric in front of goal, and he's just a different type of forward compared to the rest of the Cork forwards. Like he's just the type where you can just leave him on the square, and let's say if Cork are behind with 5 minutes to go, you could put long ball in on him, and he was the type of player who will win it, and he's such a goal threat. And we will talk about him the year before last. He really showed a lot of promise, and just the injury the last while has been hampered. But I hope for Cork, I suppose they'll be hoping he can stay fit this year, because the last 2 games has been electric. Okay, he's probably going to meet stiffer competition in defences in games to come, especially in Munster, but you can only play what's in front of you, and that to be for the last 2 days has been immense. But I suppose Cork got a great start. They got 1-3 without reply in the first 5 minutes. Just completely stormed Wexford. I think Wexford probably settled into a little bit after that, but I think Cork did the most damage in the first half. I suppose that Wexford couldn't cope with them all over the field. I think they were stood off them. I think just the start they never kind of got back into it and turned it around second half. Wexford actually won the second half by 2 points, which are going to take some positive from it. But Cork obviously had their work done. 12 different scores. I mean, it's all positive. They've probably been a little stop start in the league, early games, but the last 2 games have been, really impressive and putting up huge scores. I suppose when it comes to the first round against Waterford, the championship, who starts, and I suppose they don't even know themselves, is what I imagine. But I still think it won't be a team that'll be too different to last year to finish off the championship with. I think they heavily rely on, or look at, and like the likes of the Han and Luke Meade, Kingston, I think they would be thereabouts still. I think Brian Hayes probably wasn't as influential in the half forward line. I think he's probably a better inside and corner forward. Again, Pat Horgan just, he's doing what he does every day, scoring these 7 or 8 points, and not a lot of them are from frees, but he still is a target man inside, and you still have to mind him, and he creates huge headaches for our defences. But to me, the biggest player in that Cork back unit is Kieran Joyce. I think he's just immense. Just his skill level, he's just his vision, especially winning puckles and breaks. He sits back, he doesn't get involved. He runs on to breaking ball. Just really good player, likes to get forward, and he's darting runs up the middle, and he's really developed into a top class hurler in the last year or two. I still think they have a question mark for fullback. I think Cahalan is the least comfortable on the ball of the back six, any of the back six we've seen. And I think that's probably one area that they haven't solved this league campaign, is that fullback position. But look, they've a stupid amount of riches in the forward line. Like, they have probably, we're not even mentioning Robbie O'Flynn, who's been injured. Decky Dawson, that's coming back in there. They have an array of talent in the forward line. And I suppose the big question is who starts. I suppose maybe Pat Ryan is looking at it. It's a 23-man team now, and maybe the guys who are coming on will be just as important as the lads who start.
Yeah, Ruairi, get you in there. I know Cork's regular season and league campaign has concluded. Where do you assess where Cork are at here, heading down the stretch 5 weeks out from a fixture against Waterford?
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot about both counties in that day and where they're going to fit in the Munster Championship, because both counties are kind of hard to pin down at the minute. Cork definitely look that bit more settled than Waterford. Alan Connolly is in this form is a big plus for them, because last year he didn't really, I know he suffered injuries over the last couple of years, but couldn't really nail down a place in the team. But going into the championship after scoring 6 goals in 2 games is going to be a huge confidence for any player. Will be a threat at the edge of the square, as Kieran pointed out. And in fact, Fanning made one unbelievable save as well. Like, I know you could say he could have got another 2 or 3, but in fairness to Mark Fanning, I think it was the ball that Shane Barrett played through to him. He made an unbelievable save, and it kept Alan Connolly from getting 4 goals, which would have been incredible in a league match.
He had another one cleared off the line. He batted it backwards, and Damien Ricketts had cleared off the line. So, it was a really impressive display.
Yeah, Wexford definitely didn't seem to have the same energy as the week before. We spoke about how their forwards were, real pep under step against Waterford, and they were, a yard or 2 ahead of all the Waterford backs. It can happen as well with training this time of year and stuff. Just games do pile up, and a lot of these boys don't have the experience of playing inter-county games week and week, and that'll only come because Seamus Casey, if I'm right, is the only starting forward that scored from play. For lads like Keane Byrne, who were really impressive the week before. It just, it can be tough. It's just it's experience still at this stage for a lot of the new lads coming in. But overall, I'd say Rossiter has to be happy with how Wexford have fronted up in the league. This was their only defeat, remember, coming after a long series of games as well against the Cork team, really, who probably fancied a chance of making the league semi-final. And Pat Ryan said afterwards they were disappointed. They felt that they needed another game with players coming back. So that would tell you maybe that Pat Ryan isn't 100%, as Kieran was saying. He isn't 100% on his team yet. Would have liked another game, league semi-final game. Yeah, they are a bit top heavy as well, though, in terms of forwards. They've a bit like we were saying about Clare a couple of years ago, where there's forwards coming through. But it's still, apart from Kieran Joyce, who's come in at centre back, a lot of still the same names in the back line. And I'm sure Pat Ryan would have loved for, a full back to come along, or even another top quality cornerback just to strengthen that full back line. Tim O'Mahony, I wonder will Tim O'Mahony, Jared Mellerick are probably fighting for the same place in the half back line come championship, because I think Tommy O'Connell is now he played wing back last year against Clare up in Ennis, but he's going to be a nail down, I think, midfielder with Gareth. Also Mark Coleman coming back too, so that will be a good fight for the half back line places. Because of fit Mark Coleman, and he's definitely going to have to be in the reckoning there as well. So it's full back line is still the worry, but overall, yeah, we didn't know where Cork were at the start of the league. They were really poor against Kilkenny, but they have definitely gotten stronger as the league has come on, and just missed out in the league semi-final place at the very end.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran, get you back in there in terms of Wexford. I know Key Roster probably at pains to acknowledge look, the unbeaten run was ended, probably a relief in some quarters. But I mean, not a lot of positives for Wexford to get out of this league. Walsh Cup win, obviously, for pre-season. I suppose, what have been your positives for Wexford this year?
Look, I suppose it's a couple of young players that have come in and have impressed week on week. Like I think Conor Foley has been a real fine full back. Kieran Byrne obviously had it a bit tougher this week. Being marked by Sean O'Donoghue, who didn't get inch off him, and he's going to get that. But he has the skills to make it as a good forward. I think he showed that last week with 5 points for play. Seamus Casey, obviously he's been in and around Wexford panels for a couple of years, but he wouldn't be a name most people would have known before this year. And to score 1-9 again this week, and 1-2 from play, I suppose it's a testament to how good a forward he is. Derek Harley got in for his debut the weekend, scoring 2 points. A young guy again, and I think he's got a big future ahead of him. And starting to get a few of the older guys back in the field. Liam McGovern came on second half. Mikey Dwyer came on second half, getting game time. Conor McDonald came on. All these guys coming back first game this year. They're going to be rusty. They're going to be green. They're going to need game time to get back up to the speed of it. I imagine Liam Ryan isn't too far away. Rory O'Connor, get Lee Chin back in. So a lot of these names that will make a huge difference to Wexford team of the day. And come championship, I suppose they'll hope to have them all rare and fit to go. It's just, I suppose there's a little bit more depth there than I think most people would have foreseen in the Wexford squad. Even with the younger guys, a few of them might lose out to the experienced hurlers of the last couple of years, but just to know that they're there to come on, because I think last year they were a little bit reliant on their, maybe the 15 that started. There was no real impacts off the bench. It's a 23-man game now. You expect the guys who finish, you want them coming on scoring, 2-3 points each man if they can. And it's part of the game. And, I think that'd be the positive for me, is that there is a few young players there who were given their chance and I suppose didn't disappoint. Now, there's going to be a huge step up from what the league intensity is to the championship. So I suppose it remains to be seen kind of mixed at that level. But I suppose all signs at the minute are good.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there in terms of Wexford. What's been your assessment of Wexford this league campaign? What you're looking forward to seeing in the championship?
Yeah, for me, the most impressive performance was the Waterford game. They hung in there when they had to, got some serious scores in the second half. Their movement looked very good up front. So I'm sure that's the game really that Keith Roster might be going back to, in terms of that's the performance they want to deliver again and again, because as we pointed out last week, that was a Waterford team that really were targeting that game. Going into the Leinster Championship, like Wexford now really need to make sure they're top 3 here. It's easier said than done. Like Dublin are beginning to show signs of a bit of promise there as well. But so far, like Wexford, based on league form, Wexford look like they should be right in there. And they just need to keep that consistency going through now into the Leinster Championship.
Guys, when I go to 1B, I thought the Allianz NHL League organisers and GA missed a trick maybe, not scheduling the Antrim Tip game and Galway Limerick game at the same time. There was precious little excitement really in that Antrim Tipperary game, knowing what the result was in Salt Hill. I suppose, Kieran, can I come to you first in terms of this Galway Limerick fixture? Plenty of physicality on show. Second week in a row, and the referee in Salt Hill under maybe a little bit of a spotlight. 17 points apiece. Limerick down to 14 players for 55 minutes. An interesting tussle.
Yeah, I suppose from a Limerick point of view, I think John Kiley would be happy with a draw, considering they played I wouldn't say majority, but all the second half and probably, 5-10 minutes of the first half with 14 men. Like when Shane O'Brien sent off, you're thinking, this is advantage Galway straight away. Real tough conditions. It was a tough weekend for hurling everywhere, because the weather has been so bad, pitches are so heavy, and wind, and I suppose a low scoring game. Not what you'd associate with Limerick and Galway, but I think Kiley would be happy to get the win. I suppose they were 2 points up going down the home straight until 2 late Niall and Freeze were to draw it for Galway. I do think Galway should have seen red on maybe one occasion, if not 2. I think Adrian too. He was I think Fergal O'Connor was maybe he adjusted his height going into it, but the elbow does come out, and it seems to be now any strike to the head is a red. And I think they are trying to kind of stamp it out, and any helmet interference or any strike to and towards the head at all is red card. you look at the rugby and what their stance is on, on contact with heads areas, and obviously there's a big enforcement in rugby because of certain lawsuits and everything, but it's now a factor down to underage rugby where young rugby players are being taught to tackle from the waist down. This is all to alleviate head contact. So I think the GA probably need to do more on, I suppose, maybe for coaching the players at the underage level to get them up to speed on, I suppose the importance of, protecting players and the player welfare. But I think definitely Adrian Toohey, or David Work, I think one of them should have been read. I suppose it crops up a question then, is there a little bit of a discipline issue developing in Galway? We looked at the last two games where Conor Whelan received a red card, Diane Burke received a red card, and then there's two instances in this game where there could have been two reds for Allianz too. So that's 4 red cards in 2 games. Jeez, if that was Limerick, like, to be front page of the Irish Sun and the Times and the whole lot, because that's, I suppose, Limerick had been brandished as that kind of a team, a dirty team, and if there was a red card in any game, it's it grew legs and it became a bigger thing than it was. But just for Shefflin, like you do need to be physical, but there has to be a lid on it. You have to have control over this aggression, and just it will be a worrying trend if it was to continue for Galway going into championship, like, because you lose a man in championship, for any period of a game, it's a huge disadvantage to your team. And look, on the day they got the draw and held on to get the draw well, but I just think, like, the signs will be worrying about that for me, with potential 4 red cards in 2 games.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there. Galway's league campaign's obviously over now, given the straw against Limerick. I suppose impressions of the Galway league campaign at the moment?
Yeah, like, Henry Shefflin has to be very disappointed with how that finished, because, as Kieran said, Galway were up 2 or 3 points when the Limerick did get the red card, when Shane O'Brien got red carded, and they're playing the whole second half. The breeze was cross pitch, if anything, in Salthill. So, like, you couldn't say they were against breeze in the second half. And just the fact that they'd really have wanted to get over the line and get the win, just to the boost of beating the All-Ireland champions, finishing off, your league. And it would have given Galway, they would have been in the semi-final and score difference as well. It would have given them another game and a chance for Conor Whelan maybe and Guy Burke get back in. But yeah, just second half, they didn't do enough, and in the end I thought it was Galway who were lucky to snatch the draw. Carl Mannion, 4 points to play in the first half, but when Galway had the extra man in the second half, seemed to go out of the game a bit. Definitely didn't have as many possessions as he did in the first half, and maybe that's, from a Galway point of view, team wise, like, Mannion is the guy they should be looking for with the extra man. Get him on the ball out around midfield, because he can score from distance, as we know. And just like Conor Cooney, who was brilliant the week before, didn't get on the score sheet from play. Joseph Cooney, Tom Monaghan, who often has done well against Limerick in the past, no scores there. So they were kind of very reliant on Mannion in the first half, and when he's scoring kind of dried up a bit, they're in a small bit of trouble. But yeah, even Brian Concannon coming in didn't really, like, he was on for 20 minutes, didn't get in the score sheet either. I'm sure, like, that Henry Shefflin would have been hoping that this was a chance for them, to finish the league with a win, and it just, I thought Galway were a bit disappointed in the second half. Now, Limerick fought, and we know that Limerick, from a John Kiley point of view, he'd have loved the fact that they had to, bit of adversity to play against 15, because it can happen in championship easily, and one mistimed tackle as well, where a player does turn. Not saying this is what happened in the Fergal O'Connor incident, because he seemed to be lined up, but where a player turns, you could easily end up down to 14. And just the fact that you've played with 14 and against a team like Galway away and come out of there without being beaten and actually leading the game for a good chunk of the second half as well is a good sign for Limerick, I think. So I think Limerick will get more out of the game overall than I think Galway did.
Kieran, get you back in there in terms of Limerick. I mean, Adam English really started the show with 5 points from play. Middle third, very impressive. Likes of Dermot Burns, Will O'Donoghue, Peter Casey, Gerard Hegarty came on. Thought third quarter wise Galway really struggled, all ends up middle third. I mean, an awful lot of positives here for Limerick. I mean, the Shane O'Brien red card, I don't think there's any complaint there in terms of implementation of the rules there. Helmet went flying, so obviously red card. But I suppose all in all, from Limerick, 55 minutes playing with 14 players, showed the tenacity, showed the work rate and determination to be in a position to win this game. So, I mean, John Kiley management should be well pretty pleased here.
Yeah, I think it's just a way to grind out any results, being down to 14 men for that period of time. It takes a it takes an extra effort, especially on the heavy ground it is at the minute. I think, Adam English, 5 points from play, really good performance, especially in the first half there. I think he was probably the leading light in Limerick scoring in front. Dimmer Burns with 5 second half points, all for frees, but Tom Morrissey with 2, Galan with 2 as well. So, yeah, I think of the two managers, Kylie would be the happiest. There is a little bit of, I suppose, selection, like you're looking ahead to chatting to, like Fergal O'Connor is really impressed. He's, the league games he's played. Obviously, Sean Finn is coming back in and a fitting well. Sean Finn plays over any other player in the country, but again, it's a little bit of cover. I think we were a little bit light in that kind of area of the field and cornerbacks, when last year Rich English got getting injured as well. So, he's definitely shining light. I think Cathal O'Neill as well, wing back with Declan Hannon back, another game in the back line. And I suppose it shows how good a player he is, just to be able to slap back into to play in that half back line. And he looked good. And look, he's learning. It's it's going to take time, but he's just a really good hurler. And look, I think when the likes of Gord Hegarty came on, he brought the fight to Galway, and I think he's having a really good league so far. But I think it's up front where there's going to be decisions to be made. I think you've Adam English putting his hand up, you've Donegal Dolly putting his hand up. I do think Aaron Galan starts, and I think Peter Casey starts. So to me, the one who might lose out could be Shamey. Do you know what I mean? So it's look, there's decisions being made. I know what Flanagan does bring an awful lot of work rate when he plays, but with players on form like that, would it be a disservice not to give them their chance? When they played so well.
It's a great point Kieran raised. That insightful forward line now. John Kiley does have an embarrassment of riches coming through here, particularly from the underage ranks, and maybe Seamus Flanagan is the guy here that's maybe under pressure a little bit, but I suppose that's a great situation for Limerick management to be in. Player that with a point to prove, particularly with a semi-final coming up against Kilkenny.
Yeah, and also I agree what Kieran says, though. Sometimes you have to go with form because it can be very other players can get disillusioned if they feel no matter how well I play, I still don't start. That a guy who's maybe been picked on previous years. Now, saying that, like, Flanagan can set the world alight, but like at the same time, there has to be some level of form has to come into it. And if you want to keep these young lads chomping at the bit and full of enthusiasm, you have to give one or two of them a start if they're going that well. And I think it is a good problem for John Kiley to have. And in one way, he does have to manage it well too, because you keep going out with the same 6 forwards, and some lads will feel like I'm never going to get a start here. So and it would really shake up one or two of the more seasoned players to see that their jerseys given to somebody else. Because look, it is a round robin. You have to have some bit of flow with your team going through. Once you're going to pick up injuries and niggles anyway. Yeah, he definitely would be happy. Like Donegal Oleg is another step up from last year. Like I think he scored 316 from play over the course of the league, which is serious scoring. Like he has to come into the reckoning really for full forward line as well. And Adam English, the last, then puts his hand up too. So these are all good problems for Kiley.
Injury news. I mean, Colin Coughlin went off with a leg injury. We'll see how extended the injury is there as well. And I know HIA from Fergal O'Connor after that challenge from Adrian Toohey. But I suppose going back to Galway here, more questions were asked of Henry Shefflin post-game regarding Johnny Glynn. So feedback is that he's going to be provided a trial in a few weeks when he comes back from New York, and a decision will be made then. Roland Glennon, I thought Gavin Lee were pretty impressive as well for Galway. Took the fight to Limerick at various stages. But I think the feeling up here in Galway is that there is a cohesion issue, particularly middle third, that there's the ebbing and flowing is just not good enough at the moment from the side, and that maybe Shefflin has maybe one or two things to solve before Leinster Hurling Championship. But I suppose all in all here, guys, a good encounter in Salt Hill. I suppose Corrigan Park in Belfast, Antrim entertaining Tipperary. I mean, the weather last weekend was just absolutely frightful anyway, but I mean, Tipperary got the job done here, Rory. Jake Morris, Jason Ford combining for 214 and 221. Thought it was a very routine win for Tipperary.
Yeah, it was kind of a bit of a non-event. One way we thought that Tipperary might have to chase 30 points if Galway had won. And it's again, hard to know where Tipperary stand. Maybe we spoke about Waterford earlier. I suppose we'll learn a bit more in the league semi-final about Tipperary, but a lot of new guys in there again. Like Liam Cahill was delighted to get these lads out and get more game time into them. From an Antrim point of view, Antrim I think have definitely slipped back. I know they've had a lot of turnover in terms of players, But again, we're kind of mentioning Conal Gunning. He got 1 point from play. If he's not scoring heavily, like he needs to be really on song for Antrim to have a chance here. I think of winning a Leinster Championship game. He has to set the world alight, because he doesn't seem to have the supporting cast that maybe Antrim had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. It's been a miserable league campaign from Antrim, whatever way you kind of write it up. I mean, the near miss against Dublin, don't know if you could call it a positive or negative, how heartbreaking that result was, but I mean, even last Saturday, 3 scores only from Antrim. O'Brien was the sole scorer in that first half for Antrim. It just, for Derek Leeson heading into a Leinster Senior Hurling Championship campaign here, going to take some job here to kind of rebuild confidence ahead of round 1.
I think it was probably a negative, that game against Dublin. It would have been a negative feeling after that game, because they had the game won at that stage. I suppose the late keeper blunder to give Dublin the goal. Yeah, look, Antrim have been very poor this league campaign. Last year we would have been admiring them and how they were playing, and that they would have been a threat to any team, especially if you had to travel to Corgan Park. Only 5 points in play, which is 3 scores. You said Aidan O'Brien with 8 points, 7 of them from frees. Niall McKenna, 2 of them with 3 points. That's poor. 5 points in play is poor in any game. Tipperary weren't firing in all cylinders either, but I suppose just did enough, and not more than did enough, but they held them off definitely. 4 to 12 points, which we see all the time. Suppose from forward in the league, he's real prominent scorer. Jake Morris 2-2 as well. Like he's in good form again. I suppose the question is, can he carry that form into championship and do it week on week? I think looking at this, when we get to the semi-final weekend against Clare, I think for Tipperary, like, there isn't a word about him. There's no one mentioning him, but I do think they're going to struggle for a bit of squad depth. The likes of Seamus Kennedy now ruled out due injury, and 1 or 2 of them forwards were to become injured. You probably worry for them where the scores are going to come from. But look, they did enough against Antrim. Antrim are in a bad place at the minute. I think unless I know there are a couple of players still out from injury, they need to get them back in the field and get some game momentum before championship, because it could be a long couple of weeks in championship unless they get these turn things around a little bit. But all signs this year are they haven't been going that well.
Kieran's highlighted here, Seamus Kennedy out with a season-ending ACL. Wish him well. Also, Owen Connolly went off at half-time with an elbow injury, and I think he's very much a key cog for that Tipperary midfield unit. Injuries are starting to build up a little bit here for Tipperary here, Ruairi, and I suppose Cathal Barrett's return is undetermined right now. Maybe a few concerns for Dean Cahill here, as maybe Kieran has said, in terms of squad depth.
Yeah, there is. Like, Kennedy's a massive loss. He's one of the more experienced players. It was. I'd say he was glad to see Noel McGrath get a run out the last day as well. Now Antrim are suffering a lot of injuries, and at this level, like against Tipperary, against any of the top counties, you're down players, you're going to be found out. So yeah, look, from an Antrim point of view, I think they're going to struggle really in the Leinster Championship. Very hard to see, unless they can turn over a team up in Corrigan Park. It's going to be hard to see where they're going to get a win from. Tipperary, again, they're another, like, Munster seems like such a minefield. There's no team really, apart from Limerick, of course, but there's no team really, putting up their hands and laying down markers yet. But I suppose at league semi-final we will learn a bit more about Tipperary, and Liam Cahill will learn a bit more about them as well. We said at the start of the league they're one of the teams that would have been targeting the league. He needs to get as far as he can with them, because he's still unsure of certain players, guys who didn't deliver last year against Waterford when needed, and then against Galway. He must have doubts about going in to the championship this year, so he'd have needed as many league games as possible against top quality teams as well, to learn that bit more. Like we saw as well at colleges level, how at third level, with how many Tipperary lads were featuring in the Fitzgibbon final between Garrod O'Connor and the lads inside Mary I as well. You had 4 of the major places Mary I taken up by Tipperary lads, like both midfielders. You had Joe Caesar as well in the back line, and just shows there's a bit of strength of depth coming through early 20s age in Tipperary, and it's just kind of putting these boys in with the likes of Ronan Maher and the more experienced guys, how that kind of gels together a bit. So I think it was big for Tipperary to get into the league semi-final. I actually, out of the 4 teams left in the league, I think they're the team that will probably going home maybe in the league semi-final.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we'll preview them in due course. I suppose to finish off 1B before we head back to 1A to look at the Kilkenny-Waterford match. Dublin had a morale-boosting win over Westmeath, 222 to 15 points. I suppose the red card for Westmeath, pretty decisive here, Kieran. But for Micheál O'Donoghue management and Dublin players, a good win given the spread of scores that was provided on the day.
Yeah, I think to be fair, the red card obviously would have had an impact on for Westmeath, but like the Dublin were 9 points to 6 up at that point. Aaron Craig red card in the 33rd minute, and I suppose from then on it became a little bit easier for Dublin. Keelan Sullivan won 4, James Madden 2 points, Sutcliffe 3 points, Paul Crummy 3 points, Donald Burke getting 3 points, 2 of them frees as well, and Brian Hayes 2 points. So it would be probably a thing that will satisfy Micheál O'Donoghue is the spread of scores, because I think in weeks gone by they've been heavily reliant on Keelan Sullivan for scoring. Donald Burke's on the field now; he's getting a bit of game time, and I think he'll need to start showing some improvements in scoring, because they're going to need his services definitely in championship. I think Keelan Sullivan has stepped up another gear this year in that forward line. He's a real threat in there. Paul Crummy as well. He's come in, and he's I suppose more of an aerial threat too. I see him; he comes back to win on their own puckouts. He comes in deep to get on the end of breaks and stuff. So Dublin are playing a very similar game to what Cork play. They're running game from deep, very disciplined in how they try and get the ball inside the 45 before they take shots at goal. I suppose they're a little bit less. It's not a much of an ironed out game yet. I think that it's probably still is a work in progress. I said it last week. I do think they will get better. And there will be still a threat, definitely to extra come championship. For that third spot. With all these guys getting on the field, are getting some like Donald Burke getting back in. They are going to get better. I'm sure they'll have a challenge game or two in the next couple of weeks as well. But I think for Micheál O'Donoghue, I suppose it's the first game where they've started to show signs of improvement. That's probably the first good performance this year. I think not too bad against Tipperary earlier rounds, performance wise. But I suppose with the score and the spread of scores, it'll probably satisfy Micheál O'Donoghue.
Yeah, Rory gets you in there in terms of Dublin's league campaign. Positive ending. I suppose, what do you see from Dublin heading into the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship?
Yeah. Overall, I see a bit of regression in Dublin, and I think Micheál O'Donoghue would have preferred, like, if Westmeath had 15 and just had a bit more of a battle in it, because it definitely, as Kieran pointed out, there was only 3 points in it at the time. Dublin, by all accounts, were well on top at that stage. Like Westmeath, only Killian Doyle from the starting forwards actually scored. He got 2 points. Now, saying that, both midfielders, Peter Clark and Shane McGovern, scored, but other than that, it was David Williams from frees, and the whole full forward line, Dara Clinton, Niall Mitchell, Owen McCabe, they were all taken off by the 42nd minute. So that kind of gives you an indication. Just as well, we all know with 14 men playing inside in a full forward line, which is probably down to 2 players or 1 player at that stage, can be a lonely place. When the team are being out hurled further out the field and outnumbered. But Dublin, look, just the fact that it probably was against the Westmeath team that were down to 14, and that's, I know he'd be delighted to see, for confidence reasons, the spread of scores that were there. But I think he'd have preferred if they had taken, a team that would be deemed to be, All-Ireland contenders right down the stretch, because Dublin haven't done that in any league game yet this year. They showed, even against Limerick, there was glimpses maybe the first 20 minutes where they did trouble the Limerick backs at times. Definitely against Galway, they stretched out a bit further. So again, Micheál O'Donoghue is probably the manager that would have liked another league game as such, just to maybe build them a bit up more for championship. As he had players returning throughout the league as well, like Donald Burke, Chris Crummy, and a few guys strengthened the team all the way through. Yeah, I think going into Leinster, they might be that slightly bit undercooked compared to, where Wexford are, and Galway and Kilkenny probably are going to be 2 out of the 3. You'd be shocked if they weren't. So it's going to be, Dublin are going to have to, basically beat Wexford or take down one of the 2 counties maybe at home to try and nab that 3rd spot. But at the minute, it's kind of hard to see it, for me anyway.
Yeah, and I suppose concluding here on 1B here, Kieran, Joe Fortune and Westmeath, I suppose they've had a few positives. I mean, they've run Tipperary close, they ran Limerick close, they got the win against Antrim. I mean, this is probably a big disappointment for Westmeath going into Parnell Park, opportunity lost. But overall, this is a team that's going into Joe McDonagh Cup with high in confidence.
Yeah, they haven't been building momentum there the last couple of weeks. They said that performance against Limerick would have really buoyed them up a bit, and then to follow it up with a good performance against Tipperary, and they pushed them all the way. So this would have been a backward step going into their championship, and I suppose they're one of the teams that they'll probably half enter themselves in Joe McDonough this year, after they would have, a lot of experience in the last season or two playing the big teams. And, I think obviously I would have Offaly as favourites, but, I think if Offaly were to slip up on the game, you'd have Westmeath behind them probably. Yeah, the performance this year for me didn't come out. They came out of nowhere really. Like, I think Westmeath have been playing a similar standard, all last year, early this year, and then I suppose that game against Limerick, it really, for me, it came out of nowhere. But I suppose they backed it up with a performance against Tipperary. So look, I'm sure it's been a more this league compared to last year's league. I'm sure they'll probably be happier going into the championship, but they're still like and it's no sorry state of affairs to me, but like the likes of Antrim, Westmeath, Laois, Offaly, there's still a huge gap to the top table from what the level they're at. I don't know what it's going to take for these teams to close in. Offaly are making good strides, but like to be fair, Antrim have regressed a little bit. I think this year and definitely the last 2 years, maybe a change of a new voice up there might be required. Darren Gleeson's been there a good few years now, and I suppose it's the getting to that step beyond Joe McDonough is the real test, the real obstacle for these these teams, and they're kind of like yo-yoing up and down for the last couple of years. But like say Antrim, Laois, Westmeath, and it's I think more needs to be done to get these teams closer to the top teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can cover that in another episode, how we would actually improve those teams that are looking to progress onto the top flight of hurling. I suppose, guys, go back to 1A. We forgot it. Walsh Park, Waterford, Kilkenny. Great start for Ruairi early on for Waterford, but again, second half struggles again in full view. Kilkenny win, but injury list has increased.
Waterford, we're up 1-2 to 3 points. Had a second goal as well early in the first half. We're up 2-2 to 4 points. 2-5 to 6 men coming up to half time, so they were completely well in the game first half. But then second half to just score 4 points, and I know conditions were poor. Overall they were outscored 18 scores to 11 scores. So one way of looking at it, in difficult conditions. Another a small worrying thing that I'm sure David Fitzgerald isn't happy with is, again, there was less than 3,000 fans at Waterford Kilkenny, which it's local enough for both teams. And we were talking there how last week there was 7,000 went to see Kilkenny and Ennis. They're always a big draw for National Hurling League. And the fact that the arrival of Kilkenny didn't get the Waterford fans out, it's a worry, because if Walsh Park is meant to be, a fortress now, finally, after giving up last year to play in neutral venues, to get Walsh Park ready, there's a big concern here that Waterford may not bring any crowd to Munster Championship round robin. There seems to be a bit of a disconnect somewhere over the next few weeks. I don't know, between County Board, they need to rally the Waterford public to come in and support this team if they're going to have any, home crowd, kind of partisan crowd, because it's a worry that there might be a lot of empty seats there, or they'll be filled with away fans is probably the more likely scenario. But look, we've spoken about how Waterford have had a lot of injuries early in the league. A lot of these boys are back now, and they're probably just still kind of settling in. But second half was hugely disappointing, and even coming off the bench, it wasn't like that he's bringing on inexperienced lads. Patrick Fitzgerald coming in, Padraig Fitzgerald, who'd done very well in previous games, Neil Montgomery, Kevin Mahoney came in, I know very late, nearly daily, but they were kind of bringing on a big subs bench here. Just didn't have that impact in the second half. And Kilkenny, Owen Cody had a good game. We mentioned last week he was a bit off form up in Ennis, but he got 3 points, and 3 points in these kind of conditions. And TJ Reid nailed the freeze as well, 8 points from freeze. So if TJ's on song and freeze and Owen Cody's on song from play, they're a tough team to beat. And it's just a fact, 2-9. I know again, bad conditions, but it's not a good score that put up in any conditions really.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there in terms of the Kilkenny performance. Good fight back in the second half, but obviously there's injury worries here to Mikey Butler and also to Mikey Carey, two key guys in the back line. Heading into a Limerick game next weekend, there'll be massive losses if they're not fit.
Yeah, I haven't heard any word since on the severity of the injuries, but yeah, two huge guys. And I think it was really important to Kilkenny back unit. I think as well as the second game in a row that Adrian Mullen hasn't scored from play. Earlier rounds he was lighting up, scoring 4 or 5 points a game. But just to Waterford, 2-2 scored after 14 minutes, and to score 7 points in 55 minutes of hurling, I think is atrocious. It's terrible. I don't care what conditions there was. You'd surely knock 7 points over from freeze, on any given day. And I think you look at Davies' record in Waterford, and the proof's in the pudding, really. Out of 10 league games, they've won 3. And the 3 teams they beat were Offaly, Antrim, and Laois. So they haven't beat any of the big teams in this year's league or last year's league. And then including last year's championship where they beat Tipperary last game. So they're 1 from 4 in championship and 3 from 10 in league under Davies. So, the proof's in the pudding, really. That game against Tipperary was they were playing for pride that day. So that was probably the motivation they had that day to beat Tipperary was, and I think they caught Tipperary in the hop on the day, So, like, the record speaks for itself. Like, his game plan doesn't work. It's outdated. Teams want to play against it. Like, Waterford had some very good hurlers and still do. Like, they were second favourites to win the All-Ireland only 3 years ago. Where I just don't know where it's all gone wrong for them. You look at it across the team, like the Callum Lyons, Jamie Barron, Desi Hutchinson, Padraig Fitzgerald, young player coming up, looks really good. Patrick Kieran, Neil Montgomery, the Bennetts, Shane Bennett, Stephen Bennett, like really good hurlers, and they should be performing way better than they are. And if I was a Waterford fan, I wouldn't be going to games either. And that's why was 2,900 attended the game last weekend. I know the conditions are bad, but I think it's they're voting with their feet, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't be going either to watch that brand of hurling he plays. It's absolute shite. So I think it's going to be a long, for me. Davey's talking up of how he's going to change it up between now and championship. I can't see it. I'd be surprised if Waterford win 1 game this year's championship, and hopefully that'll be the end of Davey as a manager in this country. We're looking at him or listening anymore. So, look, I just think I can imagine the frustration and Waterford fans are, they are a proud hurling county and they produce some very good hurlers, and I think like the likes of Desi Hutchinson, the guys who are in their prime now, and this is the opportunity they're getting. I think it's and look, there is more wrong in Waterford hurling than just the management team. There's like the stuff in the background as well, and I think the fact that there's 2 different councils, in Waterford, the 2 different county boards in Waterford, there's obviously more issues there that, it needs a revival from the top down. But for me, I can understand the frustration of Waterford fans.
Thanks, Kieran. Ruairi, just in terms of Waterford and Davy, does he have a trick up his sleeve for 5 weeks' time against Cork? Did we see a little sampler with some direct ball going into likes of Stephen Bennett getting 2 goals early, or is this going to be just a very miserable, drawn-out season here for the Daisha fans?
Well, yeah, that is a huge question. He's letting everyone believe that there is, a massive performance coming against Cork, and if there isn't, like, then there's serious like question marks over the future of Davy Fitz if they don't come out with and like there's no point putting up a performance. They have to come out and beat Cork. Simple as that. And like all evidence would suggest that there isn't one there now. We did think that last year when they beat Tipperary, and look, they were out of the championship and they delivered that performance. But the potential, like that's the thing that probably is annoying a lot of Waterford fans, is the potential is there with this group of players, and the likes of Jamie Barron and them aren't getting any younger. Like if they're going to deliver Shane Bennett, it needs to be now, And just a small bit telling, I thought from the very start this year that we spoke about this, a lot of guys not committing who are still, have a lot to offer. Like obviously Austin Gleeson is a major one, but even in terms of goalkeeper, like the experience O'Keefe could give to the team, even just his experience, even talking through puckouts, even if he was just in there as a squad player. O'Mahony, as you mentioned as well, just like he's to have a free taker, his ability not in the squad. So they're worrying signs from the very start. Again, this was another worrying performance, and from a Davy Fitz point of view, like it really is now. They have to come out. Like I mentioned this before, but what really worried me about last year was an interview with Peter Queally, who said that we put everything into beating Limerick in the first game, and look, they did. You couldn't say that they weren't close to Limerick in that match. Like it could have gone either way near the end, but that's poor preparation, I think, for a team to target one game in particular in a round robin. Because we saw for the week afterwards they had no performance against Cork, and that was them out of the championship then. Whereas at the other side, you could look and see Clare lost the home game against Tipperary after conceding 5 goals, and you're thinking, they're in massive trouble now. But obviously they had prepared for a 4-match campaign, whereas Waterford are all their eggs in one basket. It was like, we've learned from last year that this year will be, we won't be just targeting one game. But sure, like, surely they should have known that going into last year's championship as well. So look, there's just a few worrying things going on in the background, but it would be, like, for me, it would be a big shock if they beat Cork. And if they do, then, the Munster Championship is wide open then. Because a lot of teams are kind of looking at, is there 4 teams playing for 3 places? Are Waterford going to be the 5th team? And all indicators are that that's the case. But look, hurling is funny. And if they do go out and win that game, then, of course, you'll have belief back from the players that the Davy experiment might be working. But for the minute, like, the craziness last year, like, they went up to Cusack Park 2 years ago, and Desi Hutchinson scored about 1-5 from play off Rory Hayes. It kind of killed Rory Hayes' confidence going into the Munster final, because he didn't have a great game in the Munster final either, and in fact for the rest of the season. But it was out of a Waterford team that were playing really poorly. Like, Desi Hutchinson set the world alight inside, and then last year he was playing more or less out as a third midfielder. And you're looking from a Clare point of view, playing Waterford, saying, God, who's going to mark Desi Hutchinson inside? Who will they use to man mark him? They didn't need anybody because he was playing so far out the field. He wasn't that threat inside that we all know he can be. So just small things like that. Sometimes I think it's management trying to be too clever, doing something with a player nobody has done just for the sake of it, that if it works out, they'll be seen as a genius, rather than just putting players in their best position. Playing a style that suits the players, not trying to get the players to play your style. Yeah, I think that seems to be the issue. And look, we all know Watford are proud hurling county, and the fact that there's so many empty seats. And it's not, I know weather was poor, but this is a trend overall in all their league games, that they haven't had a following. And that says it all, really, because if the Waterford public believed this team were going somewhere, like, they'd be following them.
Davy was kind of on the record before that he had the plan to beat Limerick. And I think a lot of it comes down to they probably did target that Limerick game. I think it was for Davy's benefit himself, that if they did pull it off, he was the master technician, and he came up with this master plan of pulling down the All-Ireland champions. So, it's like he's, I don't know what goes on in the background there, but it's like he's, using these players as to play his own game as such. I think they deserve more. Do you know what I mean? Look, it's Waterford's fault for bringing him back in for the second term, or even after last year's performances, to renew his contract this year. I think, to me, like, the round robin hasn't worked for him even before Davy's time. They've won 2 games in, is it 4 years round robin? So there's issues there that, Liam Cahill couldn't start either. So, I do think, as Rory's right, if they beat Cork, it's wide open, but I just really can't see. They might put off one win or a shock win in the championship, but I can't see him winning 3 or 4.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's do or die for him in that first round game against Cork, really. The other thing I found fascinating in this Waterford performance was the amount of times they were pinged for overcarrying. I think Johnny Murphy, it counted at least 3 times. He'd pinged them during the game, which may be a bit of a trend for other match officials on Waterford here. But Kilkenny's side as well, Luke Hogan came in. I thought he did very, very well in terms of debut. 2 points early, set up a free for TJ Reid, put his hand up. So I suppose for Derek Ding, you have to be pleased with that. I suppose, guys, quickly 2A roundup. Friday night in Hawkfield, Kildare entertained Carlow, 116-15 points to Kildare. I suppose boosted by an early sending off to John Nolan after only about 2 minutes. Laois continued their rampant form, 420-119 winners over Kerry. And Meath finished bottom of the table. Dahi Sands inspired down with a hat-trick, 319-116. I suppose, guys, kind of looking at the 2A standings, Carlow are awaiting the winners of Laois and Down this weekend. I suppose, Rory, get your reaction to the 2A campaign.
Yeah, kind of last weekend's fixtures worked out as we thought, that Kildare playing a Carlow team that were already through, having a home game, and Kildare kind of in an upward trajectory to where they're finished in the league. Now, dare we say it, but they seem to be timing things a bit better this year, but that'll prove to be in the pudding when it comes to the round robin in a few weeks' time. Kerry have kind of petered out of this. I thought to be a lot more competitive than they have been. I know there's a turnaround in players, but still, they were down 3-12 to 8 points early in this game, at half time. So they were out of it by then, and just a poor way for them to finish the league. Whereas Down, I suppose, have probably been I won't say the shock team, because they have been competitive in division for a while, but they've kept their form the whole way through now, and they'll give Laois plenty of it in the semi-final. And Sands, just seen him a couple of times. not like it's very rare that we get to see Down play, fully live on telly. But they played Kerry in a league playoff a couple of years ago. That TC Carr showed online, and I remember seeing a really impressive hurler, real wristy style forward that any of the top teams would love to have. And hopefully we'll get to see a bit more of Down, maybe in a Division 2 final if they can overcome Laois. Because look, we all know it's a small little hurling area up there, and they really make the most out of their resources. And as teams have found out this year in Division 2A, there's plenty of hurling up there, and getting a win, especially up and down, is a serious place to go and get a win. Meads as well, after starting the Division 2 very well, petered out completely as well, and probably just a small bit maybe off this level.
The year I probably wouldn't have had Down in top three. I probably would have gone with Kerry in their place, but Kerry have been really disappointing this year. They got a win there 2 rounds ago. Round 3, we're thinking they've started to turn a corner, but they hadn't really, to be honest. Really disappointing. Laois were probably on top, like 3-12-8 at half time, as Ruairi said. Game over last stage. I think Down, Meath actually started well. They were 7 points up in the first half, and I think the Ice Hands goals reeled him back in, and his third goal in the second half just to see it out. And I do think, it probably will be advantage Laois in that semi-final, because the earlier round game where Laois played Down, it was 2-18-17 for Laois. So, there's 7 points to try and make up. Look, I think Down are probably going up with no pressure on their shoulders. I think the pressure will be on Laois to get there. It's a home game for Laois as well in Portlaoise, so it will all the advantages go to them. And then Carlow, look, it started 8 normal starters. John Nolan ran Carlow for 4 minutes. I suppose it was a distinct advantage to Kildare then. But it was only one of the deaths. It was only a late goal for Kildare that really saw it out for them. To be fair to Carlow, they hung on. They were thereabouts up to the end. Carlow topped the group. They've been really impressive, I think. I think you have to make them favourites to probably go and win the division now. They beat Laois fairly comfortably as well in the early rounds. So anything can happen in the finals. Suppose we saw it last year where Kildare were in the position Carlow were in now, and were turned over in the final, and their season went downwards from then. But to be fair, Carlow have been the form team, and I suppose Laois, bar that loss to Carlow, have not been far behind them.
Yeah, so Kieran, you're tipping Laois anyway for this weekend against Down.
Yeah, I think Down have been impressive, but I think it might be just a little step too far from this year.
Yeah, Rory, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You've Ross King came in there, scored 1-7, 1-4 from play. Like Willie Dunphy, some season names with Laois, and it's kind of a sign, I suppose, that they're happy the way things are going, that they're getting kind of buy-in and a bit of delivery from these players. So yeah, I'll go with Laois.
Guys, we'll switch back to Division 1. Semi-finals have been scheduled Saturday at 4:30 in Limerick second home, Super Value, Páirc Uí Chaoimh. We have Limerick versus Kilkenny. I suppose, guys, bit of a prediction here. Kieran, who do you fancy to get to the final?
Look, I think, depending on how severe the injuries are for Kilkenny, Mikey Butler and Mike Ayre will be a big loss. Limerick probably have been, they've gone about business well this year so far without pulling up any, without being overly impressive or not showing their hand too much. I don't think they've tried young players, like Fergal O'Connor, to find it'll be a chance for Kilkenny to try and put one up to Limerick. I suppose the last 3 national finals they've played them and they've lost to them. It'll be a great chance for them to try and to get a win over them, but I can't see it. I think Limerick in this one, they could probably still try a few of these young lads. I think it'll be, maybe likes of Fergal O'Connor is given the chance to play in these top games, getting to a latter stage of the competition. And for me, I think it'll be a Limerick win. I think Kilkenny will bring it, and they won't want to have a similar result to last year's final in the league against Limerick. So I think it will be closer than that, but I still do think Limerick will win by 4 or 5 points. Yeah,
Rory got you in there for this game. I think maybe a chance of redemption here for Kilkenny. Particularly after an All-Ireland hurling final loss, also the Allianz hurling league final last year. Plenty of motivation for Derek Ling management and team to really kind of set a marker down for Limerick this year.
Yeah, I think so. It's a bit like we mentioned Clare Kilkenny a couple of weeks ago, where Clare were in that position where psychologically you could say they needed a win over Kilkenny. I think psychologically Kilkenny need a win over Limerick, especially, a league semi-final. It's still down big stadium, Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where they played in the league final last year. I do think Kilkenny would, really try and get this win now, be a big boost for them. But especially if they meet Limerick later on in the championship. But I don't know, I don't see it. I just think Limerick have been a step ahead of them. Style of play Limerick have, Kilkenny haven't figured out a way to stop it yet. And until we see them do that, you just have to fancy Limerick. And I think as well, we could just see from the last day as well, Limerick just don't want to lose any games. We saw that in Salthill. There's, a bit like the great Kilkenny team under Cody had, they just don't want to lose any match. And Yeah, I think that attitude will probably send them below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, because Kilkenny will probably throw the kitchen sink at them here and try and get that psychological boost. Yeah, I just think though that until proved otherwise, Limerick will have too much for Kilkenny.
And I suppose the second semi-final is in O'Moore Park, Portlaoise, on Sunday afternoon. Clare and Tipperary. I suppose Ruairi going into that game should be a bit of a cracker.
Should be. Now, this sounds like a conspiracy theory here, and I usually don't buy into them, but I think that the result of the first game will have a bearing on the second match. I don't think Clare will want to play Limerick twice in a row in a league final, followed by a Munster Championship first round, and I don't think the GAA will agree to make the Munster Championship first round a league final / Munster Championship first round either, which would make a lot more sense if that was the case, because they'll already have league final kind of tickets planned and all that. So look, I just think that if Kilkenny win, I think Clare would love a league final against Kilkenny. If Limerick win, I don't think Clare would fancy a league final against Limerick. They'll try and keep their powder dry for Munster Championship. Now, that's my conspiracy, and I'll go along with it for the minute.
Kieran, over to you in terms of Clare Tip, your prediction.
Yeah, I agree with Rory. I don't think, probably, I think you say the same for Limerick. I don't think Limerick like to play Clare twice for their first championship game either. So the obvious thing to do if if they were to bring it out as an incentive, if the two teams did get to the final, to double it up with the first round game, like they did it for the Walsh Cup. The Walsh Cup there, got them extra 2 years ago when they couldn't. The Walsh Cup final couldn't be replayed. I think they would push the teams then to go for it. And yeah, it is a factor, I think. And of all four teams left, Tipperary probably having the first week as a bye week, it would suit them to win it because they'd have 3 week gap between league final and first round championship. But they're like 2 weeks turnaround is short, especially if you were to get beaten or be beaten by a couple of points and have things to work on. 2 weeks is very little time. So, but as I think, like, maybe Clare might pull the handbrake, but I don't think Limerick will. I think there's something they've done over the years is they just ploughed on regardless who they're going to be playing, and I think it's just they play whatever team's in front of them, and I don't think it would be their preference to play Clare in the final if that was to work out that way. But I think if it landed that way, they just play whatever's in front of them. Yeah, I think it would make for a better first round game if they hadn't played so close before as well. So I'm gonna say Clare, because Tip have been impressive in ways, but I think Clare have been impressive. They've definitely built up more of a squad there. Maybe will there be a chance to get game time into the likes of Tony Kelly? I don't know if he's ready yet, but Ryan Taylor's obviously a little bit off, but Shane O'Donnell as well, maybe, get him in. Like Clare have got an unusual route. They usually, like in years gone by, they've kind of disregarded the league. I think they've kind of, played turned up what games you want to turn up in, and other games they're just, playing for the sake of playing. This year they've gone about it, they've been competitive in every game, and it'd be a pity if they were to pull the handbrake up in the semi-final. And I think it does, and not disrespecting, but it does disregard the competition. If that does happen in the semi-final stage, and it is something for the GA to look at. Something that's been talked about in the last couple of years is the time frame between the league final and first round championship too short. Surely they could buy another week somewhere along the calendar year. So I'm gonna go Clare. Yeah, Clare Limerick final. Sure, you wouldn't know what them rogues in Clare at, Mark, any time of year. Maybe they should just go and win the league. They mightn't even win the Munster or Ireland. It might be just well to take the league.
Oh, sure, this is it. I sure solve all problems. Kilkenny Tip, Allianz NHL League final. Sure, they'd be happy to have it there as well. But yeah, no, I think that Clare Tip game, I think all the pressure's on Tip really. Just given performance against Limerick, you need to get a bit of a marquee victory here, build a bit of momentum going into the championship. I think Tipperary will be going all out for it, as you said, guys. The bye week, first round Munster Championship, with a bit of time. So look, but again, it's a national title on the line here. If you're getting into the final, you need to be winning it as well. Don't think there's too many players that would have league resumes to their record. So, and I think we talked about this last year as well, guys. Cut a long story short, in terms of maybe incentivizing the league a little bit, in terms of maybe the winner getting into an All-Ireland quarter-final series or qualifier series or some sort of gambit here. Not sure. Maybe we can talk about that as well in the next few weeks. I suppose, guys, we'll leave it there. It's been a lengthy one tonight, but thanks for your time, Rory and Kieran. I suppose next week we'll focus in on the Allianz Hurling League Division 1 semi-finals and also the 2A semi-final. Probably look at the underage inter-county preview as well. Under-20s kicking off the next few weeks. Maybe we can preview that in terms of Leinster and also Munster. I suppose, guys, enjoyed the games over the weekend. We'll chat to you next week.
See you, Mark.
Take care, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast,
why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.